Welcome to the Dr. Raj Podcast with Dr. Raj Dasgupta, a show all about educating patients, students, and aspiring doctors about better patient care. Dr. Raj is a quadruple board-certified physician and associate professor at the University of Southern California. He was a co-host of the TNT series Chasing the Cure with Ann Curry, as well as a regular on the TV show The Doctors. And now, here's our show.
Okay, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Raj Show. And I want to introduce Dr. Helen Yang. And I want to talk about her right now because some of the highlights, and she's being humble. She could have made this resume very long, but, I just love that she went to Harvard for undergrad. You got to have a Harvard person on here to make it, to make the show seem like we get we get those people involved. So she went to Harvard for undergrad. We're going to talk about that. Then she became a Trojan for medical school. So she'll talk about life at USC. We'll talk about residency. And this is actually where I got to meet Dr. Yang, was during residency. In fact, let me just pat myself on the back. She was my resident, and she was one of my favorite, hardworking, and I'll keep on bragging about her during our conversation. And she went on to become a chief resident. I thought that would be very important because the Dr. Raj Show is all about not just it's the general public, it's doctors, people in transition, And, some of the people have already asked, can you talk about what do I do after residency? Who goes on to be an attending? Who goes on to do a chief resident year? And very interesting enough, another reason why I wanted, Helen on the show is because she's going to be doing something in public health. And not to say that she's not going to continue to be a great doctor, but I think that this is going to be interesting to many individuals to say, what is life after residency? So with all those things being said, let me finally introduce Dr. Helen Yang. Helen, thank you for being on the Dr. Raj Show. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be on your podcast.
Well, it's like it's full circle. You know what I mean? I would say a couple years ago, we were sitting in, you're staffing pulmonary cases with me and talking about medicine cases. Now you're the star.
Together. Yeah, it was fun.
So, I love your story. Of course, we talked backstage about where we're going to kind of lead things, but, let's start off with Harvard,
Oh, okay.
So,
Harvard.
So I got to know, you're one of my first Harvard friends, So what is it like?
That most people, when they went to Harvard for undergrad, usually they'll just start off by saying, oh, I went to college, on the East Coast, somewhere in Boston. And then we get increasingly stressed out when people go, oh, where? And then you're like, oh, just, Cambridge. And then you're like, oh, it's a Harvard. They call it the H-bomb.
Well, I got a little nervous during our pre-interview. I'm like, well, you don't know Raj? I'm like, no, what? I went to Harvard. I'm like, oh, maybe I should have been nice to you during residency.
No, I was, okay, I thought you knew.
But can you talk about, what was your thought process? I know that you're a California girl, like I am, California boy over here, and going all the way to the East Coast, and why Harvard, and what was your major going there?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the Bay Area. I lived in the same house for 32 years now, but my parents just never moved. And pretty sheltered, I would say. Went to school in Cupertino. And so going away to Harvard was this really amazing experience because the culture was so different. And it was also just so inspiring to see all of these bright, talented people doing things, amazing things I never even heard of. Some people had already taken gap years. People, some of them had a 5-year life plan. I remember one of these girls I met, the first thing she said to me was, hi, my name's so-and-so. I'm a nationally ranked pianist. And I was like, hi, I'm Helen. I'm from the Bay Area. Yeah. But, I think really it came down to just so humble to be around amazing people.
No, and was it going to be Harvard or bust? Was that the thought process behind it? It was kind of like, did you put anywhere else on the undergrad list, or this is where you're going?
Well, actually, honestly, I was really gung-ho about going to UC Berkeley. I grew up seeing, the protests, I had this idea of Berkeley being this place of immense, so interest in social justice and so forth. But I remember getting a call from Harvard. I don't know why, like a recruitment saying you should apply. And then I applied, and then my parents were like, well, you got to go. And, I thought at that point, I just realized, I should just challenge myself to go far away, be in a completely different cultural academic setting and just see what it's like. And so that's why I went.
You just could be a nice daughter and give them a break on the tuition with the UC.
Right.
You know what I mean? and it's what scares me. I got to tell you, Helen, I have a beautiful, beautiful daughter, and she's very young. And, being here at USC, we do get a break on tuition, but I don't tell her that because I know she's going to pull a fast one on me. You know what I mean? And she's going to pull what you pull.
Work hard, right.
Yeah. But let me ask you this. I mean, what was your major there, So
I actually always loved English literature and the arts. So I ended up studying anthropology.
What is anthropology? I'm not educated enough yet. I mean, what is anthropology?
It's a study of just human societies and cultures. There's a social cultural part where you're basically studying, usually from small to big. You might take a small group or tribe in a certain area, and then by studying their behavior, their systems, their culture, you can make some more generalizations about how they live and their ways of life and culture. So it's a really fascinating field of study.
Where I'm going with this is, number one, you know what I mean? I think that's amazing that you had that maturity level back in undergrad to realize that's what you wanted to do. And let me play the stereotype card. I know if anyone wants to know, Dr. Raj is Indian and Filipino, so I'm kind of Asian. And Helen Yang, by her last name, she's pretty Asian too. Why didn't you go in biology like I did, man? Isn't that what Asians do? Don't we go to be bio majors? Isn't that the rule?
What's funny? My parents were amazing people. You've met my mom and dad.
Love them.
Super, super sweet. They actually were like, you do whatever you want. We want to have no say in what you decide to do, just in case you decide you don't like it. So, we don't want you to blame us. So do whatever you want. Just make sure you're able to get a job. And
well, that's good. I mean, it comes down to brass tacks. I love you, honey, but you need to bring home some money at the end of the day.
They're like, just be able to provide for yourself. And good luck. It was very much like, good luck, you got this.
So let me ask you this. So how does your road go from humanities, which I didn't do that good in humanities, to getting into, let me promote our USC med school. I think a really nice, great med school. I'm proud to be part of it. So how did you go from humanities to med school?
Well, honestly, through my coursework in anthropology, I met a lot of former refugees. And that's sort of my coursework as well as volunteer work and research. And that got me so interested in doing more direct relief, direct hands-on service as a career. And so that's what kind of prompted me to go into medicine, but it was very theoretical because I had no family members or real mentors in the field of medicine. So when what attracted me to USC is most of the training is at the LAC USC County Hospital. It's the largest.
It is. Yep.
Yeah, it's the largest county hospital, meaning safety net hospital in the city of Los Angeles. So I was like, this is fantastic. It's working with the homeless, with undocumented patients, with incarcerated, just amazing to serve this vibrant community in Los Angeles. And then, that's why I chose USC. Los Angeles is an amazing city. And then I went there, and the first 2 years of medicine, medical school, were super challenging to me because my expectations were so different from reality. Like the first 2 years of medical school when I was a medical student were completely like in the classroom. We had every week we would do these like intro to clinical medicine, professionalism medicine to get you to just, keep going. So you get a little bit of patient interaction, but honestly, it was a lot of basic science again. And so the first 2 years, I always felt like, half of me was out the door wondering like, is medicine the right career for me?
Right.
Will I even like it? Will I be a good doctor? And half the time I kept thinking maybe I should go get a PhD in, English literature or something. So it was a very confusing time. But then, third year happened, and that's when you do your clinical rotations. And I completely fell in love with medicine.
Well, let me take a couple steps back. I think number one, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like, when we think about the path, the road that many people who want to be doctors, feel that when I go to undergrad, I do need to be that biology major. And I really feel that being on the other side of things now, what makes you or me or other people good doctors is communicating, is your writing skill. There are things that are not emphasized. I think that most doctors, I'm sure, are very smart and they know their biochemical pathways and their physiology. But I think that this is very important to realize that there are many ways, even at the undergrad level, to lead to the road to being a doctor. And I don't want to downplay. I think it was indirectly a great move. And it really, maybe that's why I think you're such a good person. I always tell you you're a great person.
You do.
More than anything in the whole world. And I think that don't downplay that. And I hope people get that message that there's more than just being biology in undergrad.
Yes. And I think just to kind of jump on that, I think the humanities really makes you think about so much more of the human condition and suffering. And, I learned to write poetry. I wrote a lot of sad poetry, during medical school, just to cope. No, really to say, I think that it is, like you said, so much of doctoring is not just understanding the science and putting together the mechanisms, but being able to convey those, diagnostics and results to a patient and their family, to be able to explain it in a way that's understandable, to be able to comfort people, to be able to give them options in a clear way, and during the COVID right now, to how do you be a compassionate doctor who can help people navigate things in a completely uncertain time, So those, I think this is why humanities, I hope more and more people do explore medicine, even if they feel like, oh, I'm more of a humanities person, because it's so rich in human relationships and connections. So.
Yeah. And let me be kind of like the mean person saying beyond that. Yeah. I mean, to be successful in medicine, and you're in the trenches with this, you have to write articles, you have to do research, you have to do a lot of writing. And I feel like, to do research and abstracts, sure, there's the idea component, but there is who's going to write it. And I think that people underplay the importance of, being grounded in good writing and reading and language skill. And just tag on to that of what you're saying.
Yeah, those skills really do need to be, honed. And I think that so many times in medicine and the basic sciences, you get focused on a certain technical kind of language. And not everyone. Yes. There's so many people with other interests or so many other skills. But being able to communicate clearly, construct sentences well, all these things can only help serve you in, doing research, writing papers, grant proposals, and so forth.
Exactly. And I like what you said, going for the med school. I think that it is night and day your first 2 years and your third and fourth year, and definitely I really want to make sure that the students who listen to this podcast too, don't be disheartened after the first 2 years. I'm sure, Helen, you weren't alone in your thinking, which is that I even made the right decision. You know what I mean? Because tell everyone, if you want, the first 2 years is not exactly what you're going to turn out to be and what you're doing afterwards.
Absolutely not. And I think that's my hope, that I think there's a lot of kind of whittling away in the application process, even to med school, and then from med school to residency. But I hope people really just learn important coping skills and resilience to hang on, because if what you love to do is to work with patients and to, help improve illness, to promote healing, etc., then this is the right career for you. But, maybe some learning point for me is I don't think you'll get a lot of that experience just by volunteering, at the hospital. A lot of times you'll end up, sitting there and maybe you'll help out some of the staff, and that's wonderful. You get a sense of how a hospital runs, but the actual work, that a physician does, it's something that you have to experience, and talking with mentors, shadowing them as much as possible. I wish I had done that.
Oh, wow. I mean, you kind of set me up for my next questions, because, when do I jump in your life is during your residency,
exactly.
And, I did get the opportunity to meet you as a first-year intern going forward to you graduate, What was, here's a generic question, but I want people to answer. What was your favorite memory in residency, or your favorite rotation or favorite part of residency? Anything you want to just jumps to mind?
Yeah. Well, like I said, starting as a third year med student up until all throughout residency, I just love internal medicine. I love rounding. I love thinking about, the diagnoses, really struggling, to write this differential and think why or why not. And I remember when we were on both ICU together as well as
yes,
yes, we had some amazing, reviews of chest X-rays and CTs, and it really, really kind of zebras diagnoses as well. And that was so fun to me. I find that I think medicine and the subspecialties in medicine, including like endocrinology, cardiology. That was why I decided I didn't specialize, because I loved everything. And I wanted, I really did.
I like that. Okay.
Yeah. And I love being able to explore all of the different, subspecialties. I think what I realized was I loved everything, and I didn't feel like I had to be a subspecialist in that field, but I wanted to know a little enough of everything to start the workup and the conversation. So,
well, let me just put you on the spot. You were great in the ICU. I
don't know about that, but thank you. I was scared all the time. But
one thing I love about you, and I think this could apply to anyone who is a resident or intern right now, is that, I know your guys are smart, but Helen was always, when you tell her to do something, it is done immediately. And I love it. And, and it's so funny because I put a smile on my face, because if you ever get a chance to see what Helen looks like, she is such a nice person. But one time I heard you talking on the phone. I think we're doing pulmonary consults.
Okay.
And I remember someone gave you a consult, and the way it is your interns call you up because you're on the pulmonary service, and they tell you about the case. Here's the person, this is what's going on, blah, 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 blah. And I remember they called you up and said, hey, we have a consult, and pretty much hang up. And you're like, wait a minute here.
Yes.
This is not how we, and I saw the stern side of you. And I'm like, you're awesome, man.
Oh, thank you.
I think that I'm a little sad you didn't go into pulm critical care. I think that, was it a little thought? Did you want to go in a little bit maybe?
I think that I love intensivist, because it's truly internal medicine hyped up, so much. You have to act quickly and swiftly, make decisions. People are critically ill. You have to have these difficult goals of care discussions. You have to love the procedures. You have to intubate, you have to make lines. And I think that was a barrier for me. I love the other, aspects of critical care. That was so fascinating. It's great medicine. And it's evolving all the time, but I am not that interested in procedures. So I
love your honesty on that. And I love the little tinging in the background. What is that tinging?
I'm so sorry about that. I don't know how to turn it off. Oh my goodness.
Don't even worry about it. That's why it's I love these podcasting with people that you know and like, because it's so nice and informal. So, but okay, let me ask you this. So, you did your 3 years, you did your time, you could go on and make some money afterwards, and then you chose to do a chief resident year. So, for people listening, what does it mean? What is a chief resident, and why did you decide to do another year of this glorified residency instead of just turning over and taking the next step and becoming an attending?
I think chief residency, the reason most people decide to take that pathway is to explore academic medicine. And, half of it is administrative work, which is a big part of academic medicine. But the other half is being an attending who, is responsible for teaching residents and medical students. And it's challenging, especially coming right out of residency, to think, do I know enough? Am I going to be a good enough attending to help really teach? But I think that you realize, yes, it helps push you to be better. It helps push you to read more, to be able to teach more. And then along the way, you realize, I guess I do know, a lot, or at least more than you.
No, you're sorry. And, I want to...
Then the student is the resident.
Let me say this, is that, my wife was a chief resident after she graduated. And one thing she did make a note of was something you briefly touched upon, was the administrative part of things. And I think many people think when you go into academics, it's always like an episode on the House TV show. And it's not like that all the time. When you do academics, there is some paperwork, lack of a better term, that needs to be done. There are some ops responsibilities. So it's not all fun and games. It's not all just teaching. So it's good that you mentioned maybe the chief year was as a window to what the real life of academics is. And anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, and seeing the attending physicians, who are part of the internal medicine administrative, group, and in academic medicine, you see that they really have so many responsibilities outside clinical responsibilities. So,
yes,
how do you construct, the curriculum? How do we set up these important discussions to address, resident concerns? How do you get, survey residents to figure out, the next steps for what they want to do with their career, things like that. So many things that you do not see as a resident because it's just emailed to you or, handed to you and you just fill out a paperwork and you're done.
Exactly.
But it's doing all that background prep. And for us, our roles, there was the education chief, the scheduling chief, recruitment chief, that was me. And so a lot of it was really trying to think about how do we talk to residents about what's important to them, what they like about the program, what they don't like, and being innovative in ways, to make adjustments. So.
And you know what? This is going to lead me into two questions I've been waiting to ask you because, when we talk about you being a chief resident, I really thought, 2019, definitely 2020 has been a tough patch for everyone, especially 2020. You were chief resident when we had the pandemic, so a couple things. Being in the trenches, USC is Keck and county, and you were in county, and you were in the trenches. What was your experience? What was the morale of the residency program? And what, as a chief resident, what did you feel you had to do to be a leader at that time during the pandemic?
Right. So I think, one, I will say LAC, USC, and Keck did a great job being very open and trying to be transparent, with the number of patients with COVID in the hospital, the supply numbers of PPE and stuff. And that was great because I think that kind of information does need to be put out there and available, accessible to residents and all, healthcare workers. But it was, and it still is, a very confusing and scary time. So I was on service, in March and throughout until June, sporadically, but everyday policies were changing. It was hard for, residents because they're like, well, yesterday this was the policy and today it seems now we have to do this. And so it was just a mind-boggling time to be in the hospital. So what I did and what I really tried to focus on was how do we help the residents navigate this confusing time. And so I would take all of the information sent to us from the hospital, and I made a little, part of our website just devoted to COVID-19.
Okay.
Updated it all the time so that they would know, okay, on July 17, these are the policies compared to July 15, and try to open up those doors of communication. Another thing we did was we set up all of these different ICU trainings, course modules. We had courses for putting lines in as well, just because we didn't know at the time, would our residents all be deployed, to the ICU? Would our roles all change? Would we have to go on service for 2 weeks and then get off service?
Right.
There were so many variables. So we were just trying to, as much as possible, and I think that is the role of the chief resident, to communicate with residents, to be able to allay, any fears, and then take back feedback to, the administration and be able to say, this is what's working, this is not working, and so forth.
I mean, I gotta say, I love your answers. I don't know if you practiced before here or not. You're great.
I did not.
I take little notes on this. I'm like, okay, this is good. No, and and also it's being positive. Beyond the things you just mentioned, because I do agree. It's like anytime you give advice or you talk about a policy or a suggestion, 2 seconds later, you open your mouth again and it's wrong because things have changed so much, both epidemiology, the science behind things, or even just, I know what you mean. I'm like, oh, I thought this is what we're testing. Oh, we're not doing that. So yeah. I think you did a very practical thing, which is being that conduit of how to update people with so much information coming.
Right.
So
And it was so much. We were being buried in, information. And, as a young attending too, because we made it our, policy that if any trainees felt uncomfortable seeing a patient with COVID, they did not have to go inside, and that the most senior member go see the patient, which was me. So at one point, I remember having 6 patients with COVID on my team. So I would go see all of them and write notes, and then I would just be so exhausted at the end of the day, and I would think about why. I was like, "Were rounds really long? I don't think so. I don't know." And I'm like, "Oh, it's because I was just donning and doffing all day."
Well, is this why? And I got to tell everyone this: that when I call you in the morning, I mean, I'm like, "Are you sick? Or do you just finish vomiting or something?"
Just N95 all day, No, I just always sound terrible in mornings. Yeah. I think multiple times you're like, "Are you okay?"
You gotta be worried. Oh my God, like non-contrast CT of the head, please, So
I just feel terrible all the time in the mornings, but after a few 10 minutes or so, it wears off. Yeah.
No, now you're great. I love it. I love it now. So
it's 11:30.
That's true. Well said. And one more thing I wanted to bring up, and we don't have to elaborate too much on this, is that you had the pandemic happening, and at the same time, another big, I think, important moment in history occurs at the same time, which was going to be the protests, And I really like everyone to know one reason why I love USC so much is that it is a big melting pot. I don't want to sound cliche or whatever it is, but we have so many different cultures and races in our program. I'm so proud of who I hang out with and talk to and train. And it really hurt, you know what I mean? Because I felt we were all hurt when when the protests took place and everyone's trying so hard to, put out the first fire, which is the pandemic, and then something just as important is out there. How was the morale of the residents, and anything that you could do to make them feel better or to let them know that USC is supporting them?
And so I think this is just a testament to how amazing our residents are, how mature, how thoughtful. Even during the pandemic, at one point we sent out a survey asking them, would you be willing to be deployed to the ICU or to a COVID-only unit? And the vast majority of residents said yes. And
wow.
And same thing when, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and all of, the mounting number of people who've been just impacted by systemic racism, police brutality, and so forth, emerged, our residents really mobilized and decided to say, hey, we cannot stand for this. And so many of them were arranging their own, sort of white coats for Black Lives, speaking out on social media. And I remember one day I had sent out, like an email saying, hey, we'd like to show our support for Black Lives Matter, and we're going to just meet at the steps in front of the hospital. And it was 7 a.m. Before, and that's kind of a really busy time in the hospital.
Of course, before rounds and preparing everything, yeah.
To see your patients, everything. And I was expecting maybe a handful, 5, 10 people. There were definitely over 20 people. People had made signs.
Wow. And I saw the pictures. Yes. Maybe what we'll do is I'll put this on the webcast site or the podcast site so they can see these pictures. No, that was amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's just, again, our residents, our residency program, our hospital administration here, I think we're all on the same page of, as physicians, our roles, our responsibilities are ever evolving, but we do have this important voice. And we have this responsibility to speak out against, systemic racism, structural inequalities, and in that sense, by doing so, really protect our patients and our community and our colleagues. And so I think we're really united in that front. USC Medicine, if you follow the Instagram, is very active in social media here. We had our hospital actually had this huge gathering, and vigil for George Floyd, and it was incredible. There were so many people, obviously in masks, trying to social distance.
I know.
And it was, when we were there 8 minutes doing the vigil, people were crying. People, we were there in solidarity. So I think that, USC, CAC, everyone here that I've encountered is passionate about, trying to target these issues.
No, and I could vouch for everything Helen just says, because, obviously I'm asking her these questions, but I'm in the trenches with her and I see all the things she has done, USC has done, and I couldn't say how proud I am to be a Trojan during those pandemics and protests and everything. So finally, it takes a while for me to get to the question I wanted to ask you at the end, which was going to be, I wanted people to know that, you did 3 years of a 4 years of a residency, 4 years of med school, you know what I mean? And I'll be the one to first say that you are going to be an amazing clinician and are an amazing clinician. How does one decide to go into public health? You know what I mean? What was that? And what advice can you give other people your age or people who are, torn between doing more clinical? How does that decision process go?
It is not traditional. I'll say that because a lot of people who do have an interest in public health get a degree during medical school. For me, I knew I was interested in public health issues for a long time, but it was only going through residency, seeing the importance of social determinants of health, including, job security, housing, legal status, et cetera, all come into play. It made me really rethink, as a physician, if I am trying to improve health and promote healing, I can't see a patient just isolated as a patient with, uncontrolled diabetes. I have to think about the fact that this patient took 3-4 buses to get to the hospital, that maybe they have difficulty accessing their medication. Maybe it's hard for them to inject insulin. Maybe they can't read the bottle. Maybe it's also that they lost their job 2 months ago or that they cannot afford to miss a single day of work, and that's why they're missing their clinic visits. All of those things.
Yeah.
As I went through residency, I realized these are my interests and my passions. And so I just said, you know what, there's never a good time to get another degree. And so I figured,
well said.
Now is the time. It's so funny. Before the pandemic, so many people were like, why are you going to why are you getting an MPH now? And, explain everything I just said now. But then after the pandemic, they're like, that is a fantastic idea. And I think people now do see the value of public health. But really, because these are, it's such a fascinating field to be able to learn about epidemiology, disease outbreaks tracking, but also the other aspects of health and medicine that are interesting to me. This was a great opportunity, so I'm just doing it. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
And hearing your story now, during this podcast, it starts off on one side with humanities, and you didn't really know exactly where that was going to take you. But I think it's a perfect bookshelf because you told me during this interview that with the humanities, it's about anthropology and it's about cultures and understanding. And all of a sudden you do public health. So I don't know if that was part of your master plan, but it makes sense to me now. What you're bookshelfing,
I had this master plan in place, the wheels moving 10 years ago, but I did not. However, one thing I will say is I always just, as cheesy as it sounds, I do just follow my heart. I follow what's interesting to me. And that's why I think I've been so happy. I still love medicine. I don't feel burnt out because you do what you're interested and passionate about.
And because you ended up talking about the passion in medicine, well, I want to mention one of my favorite projects I'm doing currently with you, which is you are nice enough to be one of the section chiefs of my Medicine Morning Report book, of course. And, I really want to bring that up because if you enjoy this podcast and talking to Helen, she is now helping me coordinate many, many of these internal medicine cases from endocrinology to neurology to cardiology, and really trying to make sure that it has the feel of our personality, of course, of the book. And Helen, I just want to tell you on my podcast, I'm so happy that you're part of it. And are you having fun so far?
I am.
With the book and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, even from the beginning, your Beyond the Pearl series, it's so helpful. I mean, Dr. Raj, you guys remember when I was a med student, we met him, in lecture class. There were so many of us, so he couldn't even really see who we were. But there was always, 1,000-point high yield points he was teaching us. A fantastic teacher, a wonderful clinician. That's why I asked him to be my dad's pulmonologist. But really, all of those things, he's bringing those points to a book to be so interesting. And now this is the subspecialties version. So you get to learn pearls and interesting, clinical learning points all throughout all the different specialties. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm having fun.
I love it. I love it. I got to tell you, Helen, for our first podcast together, time just flew by. It's supposed to be a 30-minute podcast. It's like almost 45 minutes already. Now, you got to promise me something. Now, you know what? There were so many other things I wanted to touch base upon. I wanted to touch base about your family and everything back there. But are you going to be nice enough to come do another podcast with me?
Absolutely. Anytime.
All right. So anyways, hey, I want to say this is that I'm going to definitely, as we're going through these cases together, as we're reviewing our book cases together, we're going to pick one. We're going to break it down. We're going to have our both opinions. How do you think about that for our next little theme?
Yeah, that would be actually really cool.
All right. Well, anyways, thank you everyone for joining me. I hope you enjoyed meeting Dr. Helen Yang today, and she'll be back again. And thanks again, Helen. And we will talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. This has been a production of Ars Longa Media. Our producers are Madison Linden and Chris Brightigan. Our executive producer is Dr. Patrick Beeman. This podcast is for educational purposes only and not intended for medical advice. Ars Longa, Vita Brevis.